we've had a lot of discussions on my show about whether the power of incumbency is too great. My concern on the other side, though, is that the risk for Democrats to have a lot of kind of broad-based fights, essentially, between Democrats in primaries with challengers is that once we get past the primary, it will hurt the Democrats in the actual November, the major election against the Republican candidate. Is that concern of mine unfounded? I mean, convince me I'm wrong, I guess, unless I'm right.
There'll always be, I would never say that's universally unfounded, because I'm sure there's some situations where that would make sense. But I do want to, I would contend respectfully, particularly in Joe Sestak's case and in Bill Halter's case, that those two, and Elaine Marshall in North Carolina, I would also mention her, those three are by far the best candidates and the best chances for Democrats to either keep the Senate seat or to, in the case of North Carolina, win one back. They are our best candidates. I still believe that Jennifer Brunner was our best candidate in Ohio. Nonetheless, I hope Lee Fisher, who won that primary, we supported Jennifer, but Lee Fisher won. I hope he wins that seat. But I still felt in terms of her energy and her campaign ability and the kind of enthusiasm she engendered made her the best candidate. So I think this is part of a winnowing process whose competition yields that. But again, that does not always happen that way, and I'm sure there are instances where we do have to be concerned about it. But the primaries are a good structural vehicle to let that debate happen. They're expensive, which is why we like campaign finance reform. But in that structured environment, I think we can actually celebrate this and embrace it rather than avoid it.
To touch briefly on another, what I think is an inter-party battle, the Tea Party. I talked to a variety of people on my show. I even had a couple of weeks ago a guy who trains the Tea Partiers on how to act at these protests. And he says anybody with those misspelled signs, those are actually liberal plants. That's not DFA liberals, right?
No, and that's a good. You brought up a good topic though, because what our training program does is we have a training piece on how to have a meeting with a congressional member of Congress to get your points across and do it in a business-like fashion within 30 minutes. And it's very detailed. We have training programs on how to recruit volunteers and how to engage in the legislative advocacy process. Our thing is about citizens taking responsibility over the political process. There are elements of the Tea Party that are basically corporately funded, Dick Armey's AstroTurf thing, and there are others that I think are actually quite a bit of integrity in terms of the way they feel about things. And while I'm not into the racism and homophobia stuff, you're going to see some people evolve out of this, and I think this will be a positive in terms of engaging in the process and getting their ideas across as citizens and not just as politicians that are trying to play one off against the other. So I think that's actually could be a rebirth of an intellectually honest conservative movement. We're not there yet, though.
At face value, I think the more popular the Tea Party does, the better it is for progressive candidates, because 8-1 or 8-2 or whatever, it's going to take away Republican votes over Democratic votes. I don't know why that, maybe I'm just wrong, but I don't know why that hasn't been more at the forefront of the discussions about who will they help.
Well, I think that's true, and particularly in Pennsylvania. The only thing that Pat Toomey, the Republican nominee, had going for him was that he wasn't the incumbent, and Arlen Specter was. He doesn't have Arlen Specter to run against anymore. He has Joe Sestak, who's an energetic guy who's really about getting stuff done, and that makes Pat Toomey just another proxy for the failed Bush administration policies, and it doesn't harness that Tea Party energy because they're not running against an incumbent anymore. So I think you're right to that extent, but where this energy goes and how much these folks get engaged beyond just name calling and spitting on people in Congress and stuff remains to be seen. But
it certainly does.
I think it'll get somewhere, actually in a very positive way. I think some elements will get out of this thing that'll be a very, very constructive, even though I won't agree with them.
You're absolutely right about that. Well, we've been speaking with Jim Dean, Chair of Democracy for America, DFA, based up in Burlington, not too far from where we do our show. Thanks so much for being here today.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Midweek Politics is brought to you in part by Jackson & Connor, classically modern men's apparel in Northampton, Massachusetts on the second floor of Thorne's Marketplace. By DIF Design, specializing in custom business websites at difdesign.com. And by Shentrition.com, provider of all natural superfood and adaptogenic herbal blend at Shentrition.com. To find out more about underwriting Midweek Politics, visit midweekpolitics.com.